mainly focused on the skin, doing that technique and finishing it out. Now, one of the things I want to show you is taking this map and turning it into something a little bit more realistic. Let me go ahead and turn the eyes on so we can see what's going on. And I will go ahead and delete the original. Oh, I forgot. The eyes are using the original as their flipping object. So basically I can take and use that to get that. I'll go ahead and apply this. So now what I want to do is go into shading and select the model, and I want to take this color map and go ahead and use it for a color map, but I also want to use it as a subsurface color input. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull that into there. And if we have subsurface turned on, right now it's not. So in order to do that, if you go up under render properties, and we're in Eevee, turn on subsurface scattering. It's on. Turn on. We can go ahead and turn on screen space reflections as well. Shadows, indirect lighting, all of that. I'll leave bloom. I'll turn on ambient occlusion just to give me a little extra shading. This is all real-time shading for Eevee. And then you have separate for cycles, but the nice thing is the shader works across both. But the one thing you have to do for the shader, if we go here, is turn on subsurface amount. And you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll vary between the two. You can see where it softens it up a little bit. The other thing is if there is a light, let me go ahead and pull this light down so we can get an idea. I'll show you how to turn this on. We'll take this light and just put it behind the ear. This is where ears are a good place to kind of test your subsurface settings, because you have to adjust them a little bit depending on the scale of your model. And actually, while we're at it, let me look at the scale of the model. Yeah, so he's too big. You can kind of see the effect of the subsurface a little bit better here. It looks more like a waxy candle. Let me turn in the material, select him, and sorry. So if we select this, you can kind of see the waxiness. Part of it is that the shininess is way up because of the roughness setting. So I'm going to go ahead and crank that up a little bit so we can play around with this. You can see it looks a little bit more sort of soft shaded now. So I've got this light behind the ear, and I want to be able to see that through the ear. And in order to do that, you have to go to, let me see if I can find it here. It's subsurface scattering. There's the jitter. Is it under bloom? No. It's not refraction. There was a setting. Let me look again. Could be that it's under. What you'll see is if I do, let's do cycles just to show the effect. Cycles is basically a much more photorealistic render, and all you have to do to see it is if you go to Cycles and turn it on, you'll see the effect of Subsurface, and you can see what's going on in the way this light from behind the ear shines through everything, and that's basically subsurface illumination. It's how light travels through the skin, and it will travel at different rates depending on the color of the light. So what you have is this subsurface radius. That's how far the light will penetrate into the skin, and depending on the size of your model, this radius will need to be adjusted in order to account for the distance or the actual size of the penetration into the skin. The other thing is right now it's applying to the entire model, and we really only want it to apply to things like the eyes, the skin, not the shirt and not the ears, because they're kind of more opaque. We can fix that by painting a map for the control, but the first thing I want to do is get this adjusted for distance, and in order to do that we have to go and scale this guy to get him to the right size, because right now he's too big. So what we can do is we'll give it a name, call him Mike. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the nose, and I will parent that nose, but before I do I want to object apply all transforms so that the transforms are even. We don't want to get any shifting. And it looks like Mike is, you can check this just by seeing 0, 0, 0, scale 1. And the same for the eyes. Apply all transforms. And then what we can do is we can make the nose a child using the nose properties here. Just select the parent and make it Mike. And then the eyes, same thing. Whoops, I made him nose Mike. Now if we select him, we can scale, and everything will scale with them. I'm going to go to the side position. This will also come in handy when we go to rig. Okay, get him centered. And right now, each one of these is a meter. He is 1 meter, about 5 feet tall. We can scale him down a little bit to make him more kid size. Okay, let's get him centered in the line there. Alright, then we can take and put this light, and this is going to make the subsurface travel even further through his body. So just put it behind the light so I can check it through the ear. That's usually what I try to do to get the right setting. And if we go to rendering, so you can see now the subsurface is basically, he's completely transparent, and the whole face, and that just illustrates the effect of when we select him. Let's see, where is it? Material. These distances. So just to give you an idea how we can fix it. So what happens is, depending on, like if it was jade, this is red, this is green, this is blue. Right here over in the subsurface radius, each one of these represents a color, and each wavelength of light is going to travel through the semi-opaque surface like skin at a different rate, or jade or candle. So right now this is sort of the default setup for a skin, so you can see that once it goes through the skin a certain point, the light becomes more red, and for thinner it's a little, thinner it's a little more yellow, and that's just how the light travels, so to kind of give the effect of blood. So it gives you an idea that we need to scale this down, because right now it has to go through a lot of skin to become red, and so we just make this like 0. Let's just say 2, so we don't go too small, and then we have to scale each one of these about the same percent. This might be 0.07 and 0.05. So it needs to do better. It needs to go a little less because he's smaller. So let's go 0.05 perhaps. We'll know when this ear seems to be semi-opaque and only the tips of it are going to red. We'll make this 1. It's starting to get there. It's a little thick. And we'll make this 05. The arms are still lit a little bit much and the ears are too bright. But you can see how the effect kind of works. Let's do it on the back ear here. That'll give us a little bit more. It's the light's traveling too far through. Probably like right here. Should just barely get to red for the thickness of his ears. So we'll make this point. Try 2. It looks okay. It's probably a little bit much, but if you, at some point you don't even need the effect if it's not showing up. Then we'll do this 0.05 and make this 0.01 or 2. Let's see what happens. It's pretty good. Excuse me. And could probably go down a little bit. Yeah, it's too much. Let's make it 0.1. And this can become 0.3. This will be 0.1. And the difference is this is 0.01, this is 0.003, and this is 0.001. Yeah, that's pretty good. We can test it in the nose just by pulling the light over here. That light's really bright. Let's make it like, and it may be that I've made the light too bright. 100. You can tell by the closeness. Let's make it 10, because you do want some even shading. Yeah, it's pretty good. Let's stick it behind the ear and see if that changes our numbers any. Nope, not really. Actually, it looks better. And pull this up to the nose and look at it from the side. And what you'll see on the nose is you're just going to get a little bit of the light passing around the corners, right on the tip, the edge, because of the thickness of it. And if you looked at it, kind of caught it through the nostril, you'd be able to see it coming through a little bit on the underside, and the same on the lips. So this looks pretty good. Now to get the effect in Eevee. So you can see that doesn't, let's go ahead and go back to select in the material. So if we take the subsurface all the way down, it doesn't change much. Partly because part of the subsurface effect is that it should only really be obvious in thin areas. So I'm going to put this light behind the ear so you can see. Then we'll go back and select him, crank it up, and so here's his base color. the subsurface is coming in there, and there is a setting, I just have to find it, where, yeah, subsurface translucency right here. Same with screen space refraction. This is a little bit of a trick in Eevee. Like if you had this, if there was a transparent object and you wanted to be able to see refraction, the way light bends through the transmissive object, you'd have to toggle this to see it correctly. And the same with subsurface. So now I'm in cycles. Let's go to Eevee. If we render, you see this is one of the effects of the sampling, but you can see that the light's coming through the ear. This is the effect of it. It's like a transmissive object. And what is going, oh, maybe the light's too close. Let's see. Yeah, it's the shadows. The light was too close for its width, so the shadows were casting, but now you can see I'm getting that subsurface effect on the edge of the ear. It's also, again, because of the closeness of the light, it's coming through in parts, like here, it's kind of clipping through the object because of where the shadows are. So if I move it further back, that fixes that. The eye still has it, but we can fix it's actually okay. But you can see it in the ear here. Alright, so that's how, and if you wanted to crank it up, you can change the numbers. Just to help for the illustration of the next part, because like I said, we only want it on skin, and we want it in the eyes. Here, I'll show you how it works on the eyes too. And again, you need a light to kind of see this. Notice that when you get the light too close, it messes it up. So the eyes have a subsurface quality, but they are also shiny. So if we select those, look at the material. Here's the base color. The subsurface is down right now, so when we crank it up, it automatically, because of the setting, goes to this super transmissive kind of refractive transparency. And that's the subsurface color is, or should be, the color that we want the iris to be. So in this case, we want it to be this kind of yellowish tone. So I'll just select that. So that gives it kind of more of that, your eyes, even though they appear white, have a bit of a yellow, kind of jaundice, sometimes red, depending, like if we wanted to paint blood vessels, we could put those in. Anyway, we need to go back and set these settings to the same sizes. So 0.01, or was it, oh, look at what his skin was here. Yeah, 0.01. And you can see how you're seeing the effect of the settings in the light right now. The red passes less than the blue, so you're getting this blue tint of passing through, or the green too. So this would be more like a jade setting, where red passes less and the green and stuff is absorbed. Then these are 0.02. I think, let me make it, yeah, 0.03. And then the blue, 0.001. And that starts to look a little bit more milky with the light kind of passing in and through the eye, and gives you that kind of iris look. Now, in his case, I may leave him with human colored eyes, but mice actually have, if you look at like a lab rat, red eyes. If you look at the images, well, they have dark eyes, black. Some lab rats have the white eye, the red eyes. I kind of like that, although yeah, I don't really want, I don't know, maybe black looks cool. Let's see. So we can play around with that. So basically it'd be changing, if we wanted to go here, notice that that color has no effect because I'm getting, when I turn on Subsurface and I had it set to 0 or 1, all of the color is not coming from the base color, it's coming from the Subsurface color. So let's go back up to that, and then we can try, and in this case it would have some Subsurface, but the black's going to kind of take it out, and I don't like the black, but I may like the pink. I want to see a reference for that to see if what causes the pinkness. They're very, very pink, and you can kind of see here that there's a little bit of white, and what you're really seeing is just a giant refracted looking at the inner eye. Kind of like when you have red eyes and with light going through. So I may end up painting a map and doing a little bit of both, but for now, just to get the effect, because it's pretty big, let's try the pink. Yeah, looks pretty good. Make it real pink though, not brown or yellowish, orange, pink. Oh yeah, that's getting good. And it's going to have the same effect as, because it's going to have blood inside, they're really typically, it's actually kind of the same color, and what you're really just seeing is the inner eye shining through here, which we can model and show, but I'm sort of digging the bloodshot eye. So I'll leave it that way for now with these settings on the, so you can see the nose with the light passing through. That's the subsurface effect. Truthfully, we could do the same thing with this nose, even though he's kind of wearing a fake nose. But what I want to do is, for the purposes of showing how to fix this map, since some of it is subsurface, or should be subsurface transparent, but not all of it, like the gloves, the shirt, and the head, the mask should not be. We need to go and paint a map to control the subsurface amount right here. So you notice there's a little dot next to it, so you can set the mapping of that, and truthfully you could do the same with this subsurface radius, but that would be a different, each one of these would probably come from the red, the green, and the blue. So you may want to paint them in individual channels, but what I want to do is paint this, but in order to see the effect better, I want to crank this up. So I'm just going to multiply each one of these by 10 just to get the effect, and then I'll know how to take it back down to, okay, that way I can, you can see it's a pretty nice effect, the subsurface going through. You can see where I'm getting like a transparency of the hand coming through the skin here, and that's just the number of samples, where if I go to my rendering settings and subsurface, it's set at 7 right now. If I crank that up to like 32, notice how it softens out, and it's still interactive. So that's the way the real-time subsurface illumination works. So what I want to do, again, this is black, but you can see the effect in the gloves and the shirt. So we want to go and paint in a map for controlling that. So all we have to do is go back to shading, add a, let's move this out of the way, and add an image texture. Stick it here, make it new, and in this case I could probably get away with a 2046 instead of a 4092, which is what I've painted the color map with. I could probably even do a 1024, but I'm going to leave it at 2046 to get a sharp edge. We don't need an alpha, it's going to be a black and white image, and we'll call this Subsurf Control Mic. And then we just attach that to not the subsurface color, but the subsurface, just the subsurface control right there, so that 0 becomes 1. And since it's all black, this image, so if we select this and then go to texture paint, it's going to be all black. And you can see in the shading, it's all turned off, like there is no subsurface anymore. The eyes have it, but they're a separate material. So in order to fix this, I can go just real quick to show. Let's make this full white. So now I'm set for white. I'm just going to fill the map, and you will see. Let's see where I ended up there. I'm pretty sure I didn't save the illumination or the subsurface. Yeah, I didn't. So let's fix that. I want to add, this is my subsurface color. Going into there. And then crank up the subsurface. And then come down and turn on under settings. Not settings. Maybe it's viewport display. Yep. It's under viewport display. So turn on subsurface translucency. And there it is. And we'll save that. Now I want to go and add that image. Texture. Call it new. I'm wondering if it might have been because it was a different size. Let's just make it 4096 for grins. Doesn't matter. And see if that makes a difference. We're going to call this subsurf control. Turn off the alpha. Let's make it all white this time so I don't have to go and do a fill. That'll be the default generated color, and say OK. And then use that for the subsurface control. He'll look the same. Save it. Alright, so then if I select that and go to texture paint, here's the subsurface control option. Now, one of the things I'm going to want is to have him selected, all of these faces, because nothing is showing up over here. So let's go back to modeling. I'm in edit mode. We will select with the X-ray turned on, so I select everything. And now if I go back to texture paint, all of my UV maps show up on this white, so I can actually see what I'm doing. So now this should be white, and basically this should be black. So let me paint. And this is just it's either on or off. I could paint various levels of gray if some of it was sort of partially subsurface, if it allowed some light to pass, but for now I'm just going to use the black. So I'm just painting. This is his ear and his forehead. I'm going to paint it black, and that'll turn the subsurface off for that. And this is an ear, this is gloves, shoes, that's actually eyes. Let me undo that. Fingers, his ear, this is his mouth. Whoops, and you do want, you might be saying, well, why do I want subsurface in the mouth? There's not going to be a light in there. And we don't really know that. he may swallow a firefly, and we may want to be able to see the effect of that. Another finger. This is arm. I believe these are gloves. Bottom. You can see this is a really simple control map. Basically, it's 2 colors. And I'm just going through and turning certain parts of the texture map off while leaving others on. So this is shirt. That's his ears. We'll want that for sure. I think this is his head. More shirt here. And a sec, we'll be able to see the effect. Shoe. I'm not quite sure what these 2 strays are. Probably something in the mouth. So you see these, and this is similar to a lot of the control maps you'll end up painting. This will be his pants. But a lot of the control maps will end up being varying levels, like of black to white. Like if we wanted to change the shininess, the gray levels would basically be like 50 gray would be half rough, and then black would end up being completely shiny, and then white would end up being 100% rough. And we'll probably paint that map too. And that's actually for the purpose of PBR, what they call this particular shader is PBR. It stands for physical based rendering. That roughness map is a kind of key element in adding realism to the effect, because even on skin, you might say, well, it's all skin, but it's not all the same reflection. Skin changes reflectivity based on how it gets stretched across bones, how many pores it has, the oiliness of the skin. So you can create, we could probably use some of this map to create a much more realistic shininess map for him, or roughness map. I'm just going through and finding all of the opaque stuff. And I'm almost there. This is ear. Shoe. I'm not sure exactly. I think those glove. So you can zoom out and have the effect be bigger. When you feel safe, because this whole area is basically black. This is shorts. Make it bigger here. Get it done quicker. Whoops. Into the face a little bit. All right. And I think, oh, that's his sleeves. So I can paint those. T-shirt sleeves. that's his arm. Or arm, legs. Yeah, arm, ears, eyes, mouth. Yeah, I think I got it all. Alright, so the effect then, modeling, object, rendered. So you can see pull the light behind. And then turn on, in order to see it, you have to turn on scene lights and scene world. So you can see where now we have, and I'll turn his eyes back on, and his nose. You can see how the subsurface, which is cranked up on the material, but now we can see that, yeah, the t-shirt's opaque, the gloves, pants, but his legs, everywhere that it should be skin-wise, is working as a kind of waxy texture. So let me go back real quick and fix one last time the material. So again, this was 0.01. 0.003, and these may be for the Eevee maybe too small. 0.001, because you're not really seeing the effect much except in the ear. Oh, also I need to crank up, and that might have been part of the reason. Let me save. Crank up the sampling. So under, oh, I'm on cycles. Eevee. Subsurface, let's go 32. 32 is the max, I believe. And yeah, let's, for the purposes of rendering and being actually able to see something, let's crank it up a little bit. We'll go to that, multiply it by 10. 1, 3, I'm just getting rid of some zeros, and 1. And that helps. Lights a little close, which is why you're seeing some weirdness there, but yeah, there's the effect. Pull it further back. Nice. And, you know, one other way, like you've got a little artifact here with the light coming through here, is you can change, I believe, on the light. Well, for one, it's really bright, so let's go 100. That helps. That allows us to pull it a little bit closer, so it's one of those things where you can gain some effect that way, but you can turn up the shadow samples as well. Wonder if contact shadows might help, which is another setting. So contact shadows is sort of like, you can see where it has the effect on the ear, and it seems to kind of make them work better across the surface. Still am getting this little brightness artifact here, and that can be the radius of the light, softening it. See how it softens it a little bit here. It also makes the shadows softer on the object, so just something to be aware of. That's actually, though, it looks pretty good. The skin's looking pretty good. We've got this with the subsurface maps rendered, and we have the control map for the subsurface so that it's not allowing it's only applying the subsurface material in the skin and the eyes. One of the things that we want to do now is that we've got all this reflection on the model, and we want to be able to do the same kind of control map for that. So we'll go ahead and paint that. And all we have to do to add that, let's make some room, pull these down, is just add another material or another image texture. Image texture. Make a new image. We'll make it call it roughness, like roughness map, and then we'll do 4096. This may be overkill, but I like to do them a little bit bigger just in case. The other thing is we could also split this up into multiple maps if we wanted to and make them smaller. So we'll say OK. Let me check. Yeah, so it's non-color. The subsurface could be non-color. Let's see what the... You can check the difference out. You'll actually see the difference depending on the map, and it may not be as noticeable in with the black and white control map and for subsurface because it's so subtle, but you will notice it for things like a roughness map or other materials. So I'm not sure what the since we're working in grayscale, this sRGB versus running non-color or any of these others shouldn't really matter, but we can try. I'm going to leave it sRGB because I don't want to potentially introduce like a crash or something in the middle of the video, so it won't hurt to paint it as sRGB because you would do if you were doing the same thing in Photoshop. You'd be working in that or Adobe RGB, which are pretty close to each other. The difference is that these other color spaces, raw, non-color, and linear in Filmic Log, are just bigger. They allow for more color, so that when you change something, like let's just look at it here in the color map, just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to talk about. Let's turn on the scene lights. So you see this color map. If I go up here and change this color to sRGB and change it to non-color, you'll see how the whole image gets a little bit more washed out. And it just changes the color response or the color space of what's being applied to this image. It's not actually changing the image itself because the image is stored. You can come back and get sRGB back. So you see the difference right there. For the general rule of thumb in Blender, what you want to do is have sRGB for your color and then non-color for your other inputs. So, or if it involves an actual color output, not some sort of control map like this black and white, then go with sRGB. Unless you're working with an HDRI image, so for lighting or some sort of image-based lighting thing, then you might want to use something else because sRGB would not account for all the colors. That's why we have non-color set for this normal map, even though it is it's an RGB image. What's going on with the normal map is it's using the grayscale, each grayscale channel, the red, the green, and the blue, to separately control the bump for this character. And by doing that, if we try to use sRGB, we're actually limiting the color palette. By using non-color, we allow for full 32-bit, well, if it was rendered at 32-bit, but a wider range of colors. So you can use a higher, like a 16-bit image instead of an 8-bit image to try to control these bumps and get more detail. kind of a smoother gradient, and it won't be so pixelated in some ways. But a normal map, sorry, that was dumb. A normal map should generally just be 8-bit channels, because that's more than enough to control its 256 colors of gray for each XYZ coordinate to get the bump to work. So now we're going to paint using this roughness map, which is really just it's a grayscale image, so sRGB doesn't really matter, because we're really only going to deal with 8-bit, just one channel for controlling the specularity of this. So it's like basically saying this roughness goes from 0, which would be super shiny, to 1, which would be super rough. We're dividing that into 256 slots and controlling it that way. And if you used a 16-bit map, it'd be 16,000 variations of gray to get a smoother transition. 256 is fine, for a game model especially. You definitely don't want to be working with 16-bit images in a game model. So if we color this, we run it to the roughness. The map as it was generated was all black. So if we pull, here, and we'll call this, what did I call it? Mic roughness, yeah, right there. So it's all black right there. It says RGB. We could set it to non-color and maybe get a better representation, because, like I said, it's grayscale. RGB really only accounts for color. It doesn't, the black and white will be the same. All right, so if we go to, let's save, go to texture paint. Yep, so it's set up for mic roughness map. So what we may want to do is fill the whole thing with white instead of black, so it's not so shiny. I like to paint from kind of like all rough to, which would be maybe these clothes or something like that, and just fill the whole thing white. So now you just saw over here, everything, there is no specular shininess, right? Okay, so, well, there is in the eyes because they're a separate material. And I just want to look and see kind of what looks right. So the clothes look pretty good. The shoes, we probably want to be shiny, at least on the top here. So what we can do to give an idea of how the shininess works is we'll set the brush, and I want to use a texture for to apply this, as opposed to just painting it in spots. Maybe I'll use the same kind of dotted texture, but I'm thinking I may want to use something else. So you don't want to, you load this up as a texture, and there's a bug where it'll automatically load it as a texture. We're trying to load it as a texture mask, so that in all of, like we did in all these others, so that we can get the color to come through. In this case, just a grayscale value. So go and add a new texture. We'll open. I need to find my, I've got this set up so that it'll show the bumps. So what I'm going to do is change it to just a vertical list instead of thumbnail, so it's easier to find the folder with my brush alphas. And I'm going to look at the brushes, and then I'll come back to look at it at thumbnails. So I'm wanting to paint something that's like scuff marks. So I'm kind of looking for, this could work. It's a little bit rougher. There's like grunge maps you can use. One, and go into wrinkles maybe, or cracks. Yeah, these will work better. So this or this. I think maybe one of these like this would be good. So let's open that. Go back to our brush up here at the top. You'll see where it got applied as a texture, but what I want it to be is a texture mask. So I just select that and then turn this, just hit the X on that to turn it off. And what you want is a randomness to it, so that when we apply it, it will apply everywhere. And I'm going to make it, just to kind of illustrate the point, I'm going to go full black, and we can play around with how this thing maps to the shoe. Let me see. So we want to play with the stroke and make it an airbrush. The rate is probably fine. Put a little jitter on it so that it moves around. It's not applying it in the same place. Let's see. So you can see when, as I apply this, it's creating a shininess to this. It's too big right now, but you get the point. What I'm trying to do is I want to make it so that it will vary the rotation of it and a little bit the offset, and maybe even the size. Let's do like 0.5. It's only, oh wait, I think, yeah. I'm setting the random on the wrong. I'm setting it on the texture, not on the texture max. I apologize for that. 0.01. We may want to increase that. And we'll leave the scale. Yeah, you see how it's rotating now? That's good. We'll make it 0.5. And that actually made it bigger, sorry. And it was cropping it, so let's go 2. Oops. Yeah, it's getting smaller. That's good. And maybe change this back to 0.1 so that it's tight. Oh, that actually made it bigger, so we can go bigger. It's getting there. Now if we change the radius, let's see what happens. Maybe a little bit more. We can also make it layer, change the strength, so that it takes a while to build up. That's starting to look pretty good for a scuff. So now you have to kind of imagine, like, how would this shoe, we can build up a little more strength. How would you, now you have to imagine, like, how would the shoe get its scuff marks? Would it be, we're doing it in the opposite. So like what we want to probably do is paint it shiny and then scuff it with roughness as it would in the real world. So what we can do is find the shoe. I'm just going to turn off this mask and the stroke, set it back to space so that we don't get the randomness. Now I can paint. Crank up the strength. Turn off the randomness for a second. So now we can, I guess it still gets an offset based on the, the jitter. Except I turned that off. But I want to basically see where the shoes are. So again, if you go over here to the map, and then you can paint. It's too big. And it's also still doing the random stroke. Oh, there's the jitter. Change that. Now it's all solid, so we can paint shiny shoes. And maybe you don't want to paint it like completely shiny. You may want to go like 80%. We'll see what that looks like. Excuse me. It's kind of plasticky, but change the size. Can't see my brush on this white. And apologize for the vacuum cleaner in the background. Let's see. And probably for the bottom of the shoe, I'm going to go automatically kind of scuffed. It'll be a different level. So like here, I can probably do it at more of a something like that. So that it just is automatically, because it's going to be the base of the foot. It'll be more scuffed. Oops, I forgot to add. I can go and sample that again in a minute. And I forgot this one too. So change the color. Just sample. And then didn't get it. Why is it not sampling? Or maybe I sample it over here. Maybe that is the sample. Nope. For some reason, it's not sampling the brush or the texture. That's strange. It's not a big deal. Well, it kind of is a big deal because it's just not picking up the color, and it should, because otherwise you can't go back and match. So what to do? I'm thinking that it may not be sampling, because this would be a bug. Let's try. Let's save. I'm wondering if it's not sampling because I set this to non-color here. So let me go and save the image. So here's that map. Notice that it's got an asterisk next to the image, so we need to save it. We'll call it, leave it that, and it's going to be RGB. You could make it black and white if you wanted, but RGB 8, and leave it at that, PNG. Now it's saved. If we go back to texture paint, and still doesn't sample, so yeah, it may be a bug in this non-color, so let's set it to sRGB. Won't really affect it much because it's just a black and white image. And then go back to texture paint. Yep. All right. So I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intentional, but the gist is color sampling here using the eyedropper is broken on a non-sRGB image. So there's a reason to paint for sRGB on these and then change it to non-color after you've saved the image. It's good to know. All right, anyway, let's go paint what we wanted. And that's kind of big. sure I got it all. I think so. Now, with this set, we can come back, set up our brush again. So let's set it to the texture mask. Just click here, set that, turn on random, everything should be right. Set our stroke to airbrush. You could also do anchored, but airbrush will do, with the randomness it'll work pretty good, I think. And then increase our radius just a little bit. Now we don't want to paint the same shininess, you won't even notice it. What we want is to do a kind of additive scuff. I'm going to crank that up, and maybe we go all the way to white so that it builds up, but we're going to make the strength pretty low so it takes a lot. And then where it would be scuff, you just brush across. It takes, it's taking a while to add up. So you can see the scuff is getting added there. Let me crank up the strength just a little bit. And it may be that, yeah, that's helping. This way you can kind of vary, and you can see what's going on over here in the texture. So there's our scuff marks. And I'm just adding them. It takes a while to notice it, but I'm just adding them here where the scuff would be. So imagine like shoe signs, basically just about buffing out these rough kind of scratches on a shoe to the point where they get back to this shiny coat. You can do it over here too if you wanted. Let's see, where did I add that?